I got another one of those emails from some woman asking sort of like to get to know us for the purpose of joining the family.
There's Robyn Brown, the woman who spent over a decade positioning herself as the ultimate plural wife, the one who supposedly embraced sharing her husband with sister wives, now facing the very real possibility that her reign as Cody's favorite might be coming to an end. But here's where this story gets absolutely fascinating. The revelation isn't happening in some quiet moment of private contemplation. No, this bombshell is dropping right beneath a massive 6-foot-wide commissioned painting of Robyn and Kody's engagement kiss, a piece of artwork that allegedly cost more than many people's annual salaries. Sources close to the situation whisper that this artistic monument to their love story carries a price tag north of $25,000. Let that sink in for just a moment. While Cody was battling his other wives over property settlements and fighting tooth and nail over every dollar of Coyote Pass proceeds, he was simultaneously commissioning what the artist described as a legacy piece, filled with so much love. The same man who claimed financial hardship was investing more money in a single painting than most families spend on a car. Now Robyn finds herself in the most ironic of positions, learning that her husband is actively courting potential new wives while sitting directly beneath this expensive shrine to their supposedly exclusive connection. The positioning feels almost cinematic in its cruelty. Every conversation about bringing another woman into their family takes place with this golden-framed testament to Robyn's special status looming overhead like some kind of twisted romantic monument. The sister-wife community has been buzzing about this development for weeks now, and seasoned observers of plural marriage dynamics are watching with particular interest. You see, there's a pattern here that's become glaringly obvious to anyone who's followed the Brown family saga. Each wife has had her moment as Cody's favorite, that golden period when she received the bulk of his attention, affection, and importantly, his financial investment. What makes this situation particularly delicious is the complete role reversal we're witnessing. For years, Robyn was the supportive voice encouraging Cody to court other women, publicly championing the benefits of plural marriage, even expressing concern when Cody seemed hesitant about expanding their celestial family. She wore the badge of the understanding plural wife, the one who truly understood the faith, the one who could handle sharing better than the others. But sources allege that Robyn's enthusiasm for sister wives has evaporated faster than morning dew when faced with the reality of losing her privileged position. The woman who once counseled other wives about the spiritual benefits of sharing is reportedly having a very different conversation now that she's the one who might be sharing. And the timing couldn't be more pointed. This isn't happening during some abstract theological discussion about their faith. This is unfolding in real time, with real women, while Cody sits beneath a very real and very expensive reminder of promises he made to Robyn about being his eternal companion. The same promises, incidentally, that he's now preparing to make to someone else. Now let's dive deeper into this masterpiece of marital irony, because the details surrounding this commissioned artwork read like a case study in financial manipulation disguised as romantic devotion. The artist who created this monument to Cody and Robyn's love shared fascinating insights about the commission process on her website, and honestly, reading her description while knowing the full context is both heartbreaking and infuriating. She describes how Cody commissioned this 36 by 72-inch canvas as a surprise for Robyn, based on a photograph from the day she said yes to his proposal. The artist writes about feeling the sacredness of the project, about ancestors guiding her work, about her studio being filled with their love as she painted. She even mentions playing the music of their courtship while she worked, creating what she calls a legacy painting that tells their love story in gold leaf details around the frame. But here's what makes this story so incredibly tone-deaf. The artist makes zero mention of the fact that she was creating a romantic monument for a man who already had 3 other wives at home. There's no acknowledgement that while she was painting this celebration of Cody's proposal to Robyn, another wife was pregnant with his child. The entire narrative presented to this artist was that she was documenting a traditional love story between a devoted husband and his one true wife. The financial implications alone should make every woman who's ever balanced a household budget see red. Conservative estimates based on the artist's pricing structure suggest this single piece of artwork costs somewhere between $21,000 and $30,000. That's mortgage payment money. That's college tuition money. That's the kind of investment most couples make in practical necessities like reliable vehicles or home improvements or their children's future. Instead, Cody chose to pour that money into what essentially amounts to the world's most expensive ego stroke, a visual declaration that his relationship with Robyn transcended his connections to his other wives. And the timing of this commission is particularly telling. Sources suggest this artwork was completed after the other wives had already left, making it less a celebration of love and more a consolation prize for Robyn, expensive reassurance that she remained his priority. But the universe has a wicked sense of humor, doesn't it? Because now this same painting serves as the backdrop for conversations about bringing new women into their marriage. Every time Cody mentions potential sister wives, he's literally sitting beneath a $25,000 reminder of promises he made exclusively to Robyn. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. What's even more fascinating is how this artwork represents everything that went wrong in the Brown family dynamic. While other wives struggled with hand-me-down furniture and shared resources, Robyn was receiving custom artwork worth more than some people's cars. While other wives dealt with Cody's complaints about finances, Robyn was being surprised with elaborate artistic tributes. The disparity in treatment wasn't just emotional, it was documented in gold leaf and oil paint. And now, as Cody entertains the possibility of adding another wife to their family, that expensive monument to Robyn's supposed exclusivity has become a daily reminder of how quickly priorities can shift in a plural marriage. The woman who once basked in being the inspiration for such an extravagant gesture is now facing the possibility of watching her husband make similar promises to someone else. The artist's website still features glowing testimonials about the legacy of love this painting represents, but the real legacy might be something entirely different. It might be the most expensive illustration of how manipulation can masquerade as devotion, and how even the most elaborate romantic gestures can become weapons in the complex power dynamics of plural marriage. Here's where we need to hop in the time machine and examine the predictable cycle that's been playing out in the Brown household for decades, because what's happening with Robyn isn't unique, it's actually the fourth act of a very familiar play, and anyone who's been paying attention to plural marriage dynamics could have seen this coming from miles away. Let's start with Mary, Cody's first wife, who enjoyed years as his only companion before the family began expanding. During her reign as the sole Mrs. Brown, she held all of Cody's attention, made all the major decisions, and basked in the security of being his one and only. But then Janelle entered the picture, and suddenly Mary found herself sharing not just her husband, but her central role in his world. The transition wasn't smooth, and longtime followers of the family know that Mary struggled with feelings of displacement that would plague her for decades. Then came Christine, wife number 3, who brought youth, enthusiasm, and a large family background that seemed to rejuvenate Cody's interest in the plural marriage lifestyle. For a period, Christine was clearly his favorite, the wife who got the bulk of his romantic attention and emotional investment. She was the one he turned to for comfort, the one whose opinion carried the most weight in family decisions, the one who seemed to understand his vision for their expanding family better than the others. But patterns have a way of repeating themselves, don't they? Just as Mary had been displaced by Janelle and Janelle had been overshadowed by Christine, Christine's time as the favored wife came to an end when Robyn entered the picture. And this transition was perhaps the most dramatic of all, because Robyn didn't just become another wife. She became the wife who would legally marry Cody, the wife who would receive the most resources, the wife who would be publicly celebrated as his truest love. What makes this pattern particularly insidious is how each wife was essentially groomed to accept their eventual displacement. They were taught that jealousy was a character flaw, that true plural wives should celebrate their husband's happiness with other women, that their role was to support the family unit even when that unit no longer prioritized their needs. Each woman was conditioned to believe that their temporary status as favorite was actually their permanent role, and that any feelings of insecurity about new wives joining the family were spiritual weaknesses to overcome. Now here's what every woman who's ever navigated complex relationship dynamics needs to understand about this cycle. The favorite wife period isn't actually about love or spiritual connection or divine calling. It's about novelty and conquest, and the ego boost that comes from successfully wooing a new partner. Each wife represented a fresh challenge for Cody, a new person to charm and impress, and eventually control through the complex emotional manipulation that plural marriage systems depend on. The courtship phase is intoxicating for men like Cody because it allows them to feel powerful and desired and romantically successful. But once that wife is secured, once she's committed and dependent and integrated into the family system, the excitement fades, the challenge disappears, the ego boost diminishes, and inevitably these men begin looking for the next conquest, the next opportunity to feel that rush of romantic power. Robyn, for all her intelligence and strategic thinking, fell into the exact same trap that claimed her sister wives. She believed that her connection with Cody was different, more authentic, more spiritually significant than his relationships with the others. She convinced herself that she was his true eternal companion, not just his current favorite. The expensive artwork, the legal marriage, the public declarations of devotion all seemed to confirm her special status. But now Robyn is discovering what Mary, Janelle, and Christine learned before her. In Cody's world, there's always room for another wife, always space for a fresh romantic challenge, always an opportunity to restart the cycle with someone new. And the woman who once encouraged this pattern is now facing the terrifying possibility of becoming its next victim. Now we need to address the elephant in the room, because the contradictions in Cody's behavior have become so glaring that even the most casual observer can spot them from a mile away. This is a man who has publicly declared that he no longer believes in the fundamentalist Mormon doctrine that originally justified his plural marriage lifestyle, yet here he is actively pursuing additional wives like he's shopping for a new living room set. Let's be crystal clear about what Cody has said on camera. During multiple tell-all episodes and recent seasons, he's made definitive statements about abandoning the faith that founded his family. He's claimed he no longer believes in the teachings that demanded plural marriage as a pathway to the highest level of heaven. He's dismissed the doctrine that told him taking multiple wives was not just acceptable, but required for his eternal salvation. These weren't casual comments or moments of doubt. These were clear, unambiguous declarations that the spiritual foundation of his entire adult life was essentially meaningless. But here's where the manipulative genius of men like Cody reveals itself. By rejecting the organized religious structure, he's not actually rejecting the lifestyle that benefits him. He's simply removing the inconvenient guardrails that might have held him accountable to religious leaders or community standards. Without a church hierarchy to answer to, without elders who might question his treatment of his wives, without a community that could call out his behavior, Cody has essentially given himself permission to create his own version of plural marriage with his own rules. This is the ultimate have your cake and eat it too scenario for a man who wants the benefits of multiple relationships without the spiritual responsibility that originally justified them. Think about it from a practical standpoint. If Cody truly believed that plural marriage was no longer spiritually necessary, if he genuinely felt that the doctrine was false, why wouldn't he simply commit to monogamy with Robyn? Why continue pursuing a lifestyle that had caused decades of pain and conflict in his family? The answer becomes obvious when you strip away all the religious rhetoric and look at the core motivations. Cody isn't seeking additional wives because of divine commandment or spiritual conviction. He's seeking them because he enjoys the power, the variety, the ego boost that comes from having multiple women competing for his attention and resources. The religious justification was always just a convenient cover story for what was essentially a selfish desire to have his romantic and sexual needs met by multiple partners without having to commit fully to any single relationship. Now, Robyn finds herself in the impossible position of trying to argue against additional wives using the very same religious framework that Cody has publicly rejected. How do you convince a man to honor the principles of a faith he claims to no longer believe in? How do you invoke spiritual arguments with someone who has dismissed those same spiritual teachings as false doctrine? How do you appeal to religious duty when your husband has announced that religious duty no longer applies to him? The brilliance of Cody's strategy, from a purely manipulative standpoint, is that he's removed every tool Robyn might have used to oppose his plans. She can't appeal to their church leadership because they're no longer part of an organized church. She can't invoke religious law because Cody has declared that religious law doesn't govern him. She can't even point to the promises he made about their eternal family because he's essentially announced that eternity is no longer part of his belief system. What's left is the raw reality that Cody wants multiple wives because he wants multiple wives, and all the spiritual justifications that once masked this desire have been stripped away. Robyn is finally seeing her husband's true motivations without the comfortable buffer of religious doctrine, and the view isn't pretty. This isn't about salvation or celestial families or divine commandments. This is about a man who has engineered a lifestyle that serves his desires while requiring multiple women to sacrifice their own needs for his benefit. What's absolutely fascinating about this unfolding drama is how the broader sister-wife community has been connecting dots and recognizing patterns that might not be obvious to casual observers. Women who've lived this lifestyle, who've navigated the complex emotional landscape of plural marriage, are watching Robyn's situation with a mixture of validation and sympathy that speaks volumes about the shared experience of being manipulated within these family structures. The conversations happening in private Facebook groups, in quilting circles, in the hushed tones of grocery store encounters, all center around the same theme. These women are saying what many of us have been thinking for years, that Robyn is about to experience exactly what Mary, Janelle, and Christine endured during their marriages to Cody. The difference is that Robyn has a front row seat to observe how this cycle ends, having watched 3 other women get discarded by the same man who once promised them eternal devotion. Former and current plural wives are particularly focused on the financial manipulation aspect of Robyn's story. They recognize the pattern of expensive gifts and grand gestures being used as tools of control rather than genuine expressions of love. The $25,000 painting isn't seen as romantic by women who understand how these dynamics work. They see it as a golden cage, a beautiful prison that ties Robyn's identity so closely to being Cody's favorite that she can't imagine life outside that role. What these experienced women know that Robyn is just beginning to learn is that the expensive gifts always come with strings attached. That massive painting isn't just artwork, it's a daily reminder of how much Cody has invested in their relationship and therefore how grateful Robyn should be. It's a visual representation of her debt to him, a constant presence that says, "Look how much I love you, look how much you mean to me, look how you could never find this kind of devotion anywhere else." The sister-wife community also recognizes the isolation tactics that Cody has employed throughout his marriage to Robyn. By positioning her as the spiritual wife, the one who truly understood plural marriage principles, the one who could handle sharing better than the others, he effectively separated her from potential allies within his own family. Robyn couldn't bond with the other wives over shared grievances because she was supposed to be above such concerns. She couldn't commiserate about feeling neglected because she was allegedly receiving more attention than anyone else. Now that the other wives have left and established independent lives, the sister-wife community is watching to see whether Robyn can break free from the psychological patterns that kept her trapped in the favorite wife role. They're observing her reactions to Cody's courtship activities with the keen eye of women who've been exactly where she is now. They recognize the panic, the desperate attempts to maintain relevance, the bargaining and negotiating that happens when a woman realizes her special status is about to evaporate. These women are also noting something else that's crucial to understanding Robyn's current predicament. They're pointing out that unlike Mary, Janelle, and Christine, Robyn doesn't have the excuse of religious naivety or cultural conditioning to fall back on. She watched 3 other wives get emotionally abandoned by Cody. She witnessed the pain and betrayal that came with being replaced by a newer, more exciting romantic interest. She saw how Cody's promises of eternal love and devotion crumbled when those relationships no longer served his needs. The sister-wife community isn't expressing schadenfreude about Robyn's situation, but they are expressing a kind of grim satisfaction that the patterns they've long recognized are finally becoming visible to everyone. They're saying that Robyn's current crisis validates their understanding of how these relationships actually work beneath all the spiritual rhetoric and romantic promises. Most importantly, these women are creating a space for honest conversation about the emotional and financial abuse that masquerades as religious devotion in plural marriage communities. They're naming the manipulation tactics, sharing their own stories of expensive gifts that became guilt weapons, and offering support to any woman ready to recognize that being the favorite wife is just another form of being controlled. Now let's pause for a moment and talk directly to every woman watching this unfold, because Robyn's situation offers us a masterclass in recognizing manipulation tactics that extend far beyond the world of plural marriage. Whether you're dealing with a husband, a boss, a family member, or anyone else who uses financial control and emotional manipulation to maintain power, these patterns are worth understanding. Red flag checklist time, and see if any of these ring a bell in your own life or in relationships you've observed. First up is the expensive gesture that comes with emotional debt. This is when someone gives you an extravagant gift, makes a grand romantic gesture, or spends significant money on something that's supposedly just for you, but the real purpose is to create a sense of obligation. That $25,000 painting isn't just artwork, it's leverage. Every time Robyn considers opposing Cody's plans, she's looking at a visual reminder of how much he's invested in their relationship and how ungrateful she would be to not appreciate his devotion. The second red flag is love bombing, followed by withdrawal. This is the cycle where someone showers you with attention, affection, and resources during the courtship phase, or when they're trying to secure your compliance, then gradually reduces that investment once you're committed. Every single one of Cody's wives experienced this pattern. The intense romantic pursuit, the promises of eternal devotion, the special treatment that made them feel chosen and valued, followed by the slow decline in attention as newer interests captured his focus. Third warning sign is spiritual or moral superiority as a control mechanism. Watch for partners who position themselves as more enlightened, more committed to shared values, or more understanding of important principles than you are. Cody consistently used religious doctrine and spiritual superiority to shame his wives into accepting treatment they would never tolerate in a secular relationship. He convinced them that their discomfort with sharing him was a character flaw, that jealousy was a sin they needed to overcome, that true love meant sacrificing their own needs for his vision of their family. Here's a big one that every woman who's ever managed a household budget needs to recognize: financial decision-making that prioritizes image over security. When someone spends money on expensive status symbols, elaborate gestures, or luxury items while simultaneously claiming financial hardship or fighting over practical expenses, that's a manipulation tactic. It's about demonstrating power and control, not genuine affection or financial responsibility. Another crucial pattern is isolation disguised as special treatment. This is when someone makes you feel like you're the chosen one, the person who truly understands them, the one who's different from everyone else in their life. But the real purpose is to separate you from potential allies who might help you recognize problematic behavior. Robyn was positioned as the spiritual wife, the one who got plural marriage better than the others, which effectively prevented her from bonding with the other wives over shared experiences of neglect and manipulation. Watch for partners who constantly rewrite history and change the rules to suit their current needs. Cody's journey from devout fundamentalist to someone who claims not to believe in the doctrine that justified his lifestyle is a perfect example. When someone can abandon core principles that supposedly govern their behavior without missing a beat, they're revealing that those principles were never actually principles at all, just convenient justifications for getting what they wanted. The final red flag that every woman needs to recognize is the promise of exclusivity that's constantly under threat. This is when someone makes you feel secure in your special status while simultaneously keeping you anxious about losing that status. The painting celebrates Robyn and Cody's unique love story while he actively pursues other women. The message is clear: you're special, but not so special that you can't be replaced if you don't continue earning that specialness through compliance and gratitude. These patterns aren't exclusive to plural marriage or religious communities. They show up in corporate environments, in extended family dynamics, in friendships, and in all kinds of romantic relationships. The key is learning to trust your instincts when something feels like manipulation, even when it's wrapped in pretty paper and presented as love. What's happening in the broader community around this revelation is nothing short of extraordinary, and it's creating ripple effects that extend far beyond the Brown family's personal drama. Women who've been following this story for years are having their own lightbulb moments, connecting patterns they've observed in their own lives with the manipulation tactics playing out on their television screens. The sister wife community, in particular, is experiencing what can only be described as a collective awakening. Women who've lived in plural marriages, who've navigated the complex emotional landscape of sharing husbands and resources, are speaking out with a clarity and courage that's been building for years. They're naming behaviors they once accepted as normal, questioning systems they were taught to embrace, and supporting each other through the difficult process of recognizing manipulation that was disguised as divine commandment. But the impact is spreading beyond just plural marriage communities. Women in traditional monogamous relationships are seeing their own experiences reflected in Robyn's story. They're recognizing the expensive gifts that came with strings attached, the isolation tactics that separated them from supportive friends and family, the spiritual or moral superiority their partners used to justify selfish behavior. The conversation has evolved from gossip about a reality TV family to a broader discussion about financial abuse and emotional manipulation in all kinds of relationships. Social media platforms have become gathering places for these conversations, with women sharing their own stories of recognizing red flags, leaving manipulative relationships, and supporting each other through the complex process of rebuilding their lives and their sense of self-worth. The hashtags and comment threads aren't just about entertainment anymore. They've become informal support groups where women validate each other's experiences and share practical advice about everything from financial planning to legal resources. What's particularly powerful about this moment is how it's bridging generational gaps. Older women who lived through decades of accepting behavior they now recognize as problematic are connecting with younger women who are learning to identify these patterns early. Mothers are having conversations with their daughters about recognizing manipulation tactics, about trusting their instincts when something feels wrong, about understanding that expensive gifts and grand gestures can sometimes be tools of control rather than expressions of genuine love. The ripple effects are even reaching into religious communities where plural marriage isn't practiced, but where similar power dynamics exist. Women in conservative churches are questioning why they were taught that submission means accepting treatment that diminishes their worth and agency. They're examining their own relationships and community structures with new eyes, asking whether spiritual language is being used to justify behavior that's actually harmful and self-serving. Mental health professionals are also taking note of this cultural moment. They're seeing clients who reference Robyn's situation as a way to explain their own experiences with financial manipulation and emotional abuse. The visibility of these patterns on a national platform is giving people language to describe their own experiences and permission to seek help for situations they might have previously dismissed as normal or spiritually required. Perhaps most importantly, this awakening is creating space for honest conversations about the difference between genuine love and possessive control. Women are learning to distinguish between partners who invest in their happiness and growth versus those who make investments designed to create obligation and dependence. They're recognizing that true devotion doesn't require expensive proof, doesn't demand gratitude for basic respect, and doesn't use spiritual or moral superiority as justification for selfish behavior. The sister wives who've already left toxic plural marriages are serving as powerful examples of what's possible when women trust their instincts and prioritize their own well-being. Their stories of rebuilding their lives, finding genuine happiness, and creating supportive communities are inspiring other women to examine their own situations with fresh perspective. This isn't just about one family's drama anymore. It's become a catalyst for broader conversations about recognizing manipulation, building supportive communities, and empowering women to trust their own judgment about what constitutes healthy, loving relationships. Let's talk numbers for a moment, because the financial picture surrounding this family tells a story that's both infuriating and illuminating for anyone who's ever had to stretch a dollar or make tough choices about where to allocate limited resources. The $25,000 painting isn't just an expensive piece of artwork. It's a window into how financial manipulation works in relationships, where one person controls the money and uses spending decisions as tools of power and control. Think about what $25,000 represents in real-world terms for most families. That's a reliable used car that could last for years. That's a down payment on a modest home. That's a year of college tuition at many state schools. That's emergency savings that could carry a family through job loss or medical crisis. That's retirement planning or investment in children's futures, or debt reduction that could transform a family's financial security. Instead, that money went toward what essentially amounts to the world's most expensive manipulation tool. A daily reminder to Robyn of how much Cody has invested in their relationship and how grateful she should be for his devotion. But here's what makes this spending particularly galling. This commission happened while Cody was simultaneously fighting his other wives over every dollar of their shared assets, claiming financial hardship and disputing property settlements that would have provided some security for women who'd spent decades building his empire. The timing reveals everything about Cody's true priorities. While Mary, Janelle, and Christine were negotiating for their fair share of Coyote Pass proceeds, while they were trying to secure some financial independence after years of contributing to the family's success, Cody was commissioning luxury artwork to celebrate his relationship with his remaining wife. The message couldn't be clearer. Resources that could have provided security for multiple women were instead funneled into ego-stroking artwork for the one woman who remained compliant. But let's dig deeper into the psychology of this financial manipulation, because it's a pattern that extends far beyond plural marriage communities. This is about how expensive gifts are used to create emotional debt and maintain control in relationships. Every time Robyn considers opposing Cody's plans, every time she feels uncomfortable with his behavior, every time she thinks about asserting her own needs, she's looking at a $25,000 reminder of how much he's sacrificed for their love. The painting serves as a constant guilt mechanism. It whispers that she should be grateful, that she's received more than other wives, that questioning his judgment would be selfish and ungrateful. It transforms normal relationship negotiations into battles against perceived ingratitude. How do you argue with someone who can point to such an expensive gesture and ask how you could possibly doubt his devotion? This is financial gaslighting at its most sophisticated level. By spending enormous amounts of money on gesture gifts rather than practical investments in the family's future, Cody creates a narrative where he's the generous romantic husband who deserves appreciation and compliance. Meanwhile, the practical needs of the family, the retirement planning, the college funds, the emergency savings, all take a back seat to funding his ego and maintaining his control over family dynamics. The artist's description of this commission reveals another layer of manipulation. She writes about feeling the sacredness of the project, about ancestors guiding her work, about creating a legacy painting that tells their love story. But what she was actually documenting was a manipulation tactic, a expensive tool designed to maintain one woman's compliance within an abusive family system. Now, as Cody sits beneath this expensive monument to his devotion while discussing bringing additional wives into their marriage, the manipulation becomes crystal clear. The painting that was supposed to celebrate their exclusive connection has become the backdrop for conversations about sharing him with other women. The artwork that allegedly represented their eternal bond is now witnessing discussions about temporary arrangements with new romantic interests. The financial manipulation extends beyond just the painting itself. It's about the pattern of using money as a weapon of control, spending resources on status symbols and ego gratification while claiming poverty when wives ask for basic security and independence. It's about creating financial dependence through expensive gifts that tie women's identities to their relationships rather than investing in their independence and empowerment. Now we arrive at the moment of truth, the crossroads where Robyn must confront the impossible choice that every woman in her position eventually eventually faces. She can either accept the addition of new wives to their family and watch her privileged status evaporate, or she can oppose Cody's plans and reveal that her decade-long performance as the perfect plural wife was exactly that, a performance designed to maintain her position as his favorite. The delicious irony here is that either choice exposes the fundamental hypocrisy that's been at the heart of Robyn's public persona for years. If she graciously welcomes new sister wives with the same enthusiasm she once encouraged in others, she'll be forced to experience firsthand the emotional devastation that Mary, Janelle, and Christine endured. She'll discover what it feels like to watch your husband's attention, affection, and resources get redirected towards someone newer and more exciting. She'll finally understand the pain of being told that jealousy is a character flaw while watching your marriage dissolve in real time. But if Robyn opposes the addition of new wives, if she fights against Cody's courtship activities, if she demands to remain his only wife, then she's admitting that everything she preached about plural marriage being a beautiful spiritual calling was complete nonsense. She'll be revealing that her support for the lifestyle only extended as far as it benefited her personally, that her understanding of sharing was purely theoretical, and that her spiritual superiority was just another manipulation tactic designed to maintain her favored position. Sources close to the situation suggest that Robyn is already showing signs of the stress and panic that come with recognizing your secure position is under threat. The woman who once counseled other wives about accepting God's plan for their family is reportedly struggling to practice what she preached when faced with the reality of her husband actively pursuing other women. The gracious acceptance she expected from others is proving much more difficult to embody when she's the one being asked to step aside and make room. What makes this situation particularly devastating for Robyn is that she has a front row seat to see exactly how this story ends. She watched Mary become increasingly isolated and desperate, clinging to the remnants of her marriage while Cody's attention moved elsewhere. She witnessed Janelle's gradual emotional withdrawal as she realized that practical partnership wasn't enough to maintain Cody's romantic interest. She observed Christine's growing frustration and eventual decision to leave, rather than continue accepting scraps of attention and affection. Now Robyn is facing the terrifying possibility that she's next in line for the same treatment, and unlike the other wives, she can't claim ignorance about how Cody operates. She's seen his pattern play out multiple times. She's watched him promise eternal devotion to women he eventually discarded. She's observed his ability to rewrite history and justify abandoning wives who no longer served his purposes. The $25,000 painting that once represented her security has become a daily reminder of how quickly priorities can shift in Cody's world. The expensive gesture that was supposed to prove her special status is now serving as the backdrop for conversations about replacing her with someone newer and more exciting. The artwork that celebrated their exclusive connection is witnessing discussions about sharing that connection with other women. Perhaps most crushing for Robyn is the realization that all her strategic maneuvering, all her careful positioning as the spiritual wife who truly understood plural marriage, all her years of supporting Cody's treatment of the other wives was ultimately pointless. She played the game perfectly, said all the right things, maintained the ideal image of the supportive plural wife, and it still wasn't enough to guarantee her permanent place in his affections. The community that once viewed Robyn as the villain in the Brown family saga is now watching her confront the same impossible choices that broke up the marriages of 3 other women. There's a certain justice in seeing her experience the anxiety and insecurity she once dismissed in others, but there's also recognition that she's become another victim of the same manipulative system that destroyed the lives of her sister wives. So here we stand at this pivotal moment, watching the final act of a drama that's been decades in the making, and the implications stretch far beyond one family's messy dissolution. What's emerging from the ashes of the Brown family empire is something far more powerful and transformative than anyone could have predicted when this story first began. The legal ramifications alone are fascinating to observe unfold. While Robyn grapples with her impossible choice, the other wives have been quietly building independent lives that serve as powerful examples of what's possible when women prioritize their own well-being over maintaining relationships that diminish their worth. Mary, Janelle, and Christine have each navigated the complex process of extricating themselves from shared financial obligations, property disputes, and the emotional entanglements that kept them trapped for years. Their success in establishing independent lives has created a roadmap for other women facing similar circumstances. The legal strategies they've employed, the financial planning they've undertaken, the support networks they've built, all serve as practical templates for anyone trying to leave a manipulative relationship. More importantly, their visible happiness and success after leaving contradicts the narrative that women can't thrive without the security of plural marriage or traditional patriarchal family structures. What's particularly powerful about this moment is how it's fostering genuine sisterhood among women who were once positioned as competitors for the same man's attention and resources. The divide-and-conquer tactics that kept the wives isolated from each other for years are losing their effectiveness as these women recognize their shared experiences of manipulation and control. Instead of competing for scraps of affection from a man who is never capable of genuinely loving any of them, they're building supportive relationships with each other and with the broader community of women who faced similar challenges. The financial abuse that masqueraded as romantic devotion is being called out and documented in ways that could have legal implications for future cases. The pattern of expensive gifts followed by financial control, of grand gestures designed to create emotional debt, of using luxury spending to justify restricting women's access to practical resources, all of this is being recognized as a form of economic abuse that courts and legal professionals are beginning to take more seriously. Mental health professionals are also paying attention to this cultural moment, recognizing how the Brown family's public dissolution is creating opportunities for important conversations about recognizing manipulation in relationships, about the difference between genuine love and possessive control, about the importance of maintaining personal agency and financial independence, even within committed partnerships. The ripple effects are reaching into religious communities where similar power dynamics exist, prompting conversations about whether spiritual language is being used to justify behavior that's actually harmful to women and families. Young women growing up in conservative religious environments are watching this story unfold and asking different questions about the relationships they want to build, the compromises they're willing to make, and the warning signs they need to recognize. Perhaps most importantly, this story is contributing to a broader cultural shift in how we talk about women's worth and agency in relationships. The narrative that women should be grateful for male attention regardless of how that attention is expressed, that expensive gifts justify accepting poor treatment, that spiritual or religious obligations require sacrificing personal well-being, all of these harmful ideas are being challenged and dismantled through public conversation and community support. The national sisterhood is rising, and it's not just about supporting women who are leaving plural marriages. It's about creating a culture where women trust their instincts about manipulation, where they prioritize their own well-being over maintaining relationships that diminish their worth, where they support each other through the difficult process of recognizing patterns and making changes. As for Robyn, whatever choice she ultimately makes, she's already served as a powerful example of how manipulation tactics eventually fail, how expensive gestures can't purchase genuine devotion, and how the systems designed to control women ultimately reveal their own contradictions. The $25,000 painting that was supposed to secure her position has instead become a symbol of how quickly promises can crumble and priorities can shift when relationships are built on power and control rather than genuine love and respect. So what do you think is going to happen next in this unfolding drama? Do you believe Robyn will finally experience the same awakening that led the other wives to prioritize their own well-being? Or will she continue clinging to a system that's already shown her exactly how it treats women who are no longer useful? And which moment in this entire saga has you cheering the loudest for the strength these women have shown in recognizing their worth? Make sure to tap that like button, hit subscribe, and keep those notifications turned on, because trust me when I tell you this story is far from over. A fresh video is already queued up, and something tells me the next round of sister-wife revelations will be even juicier than the last.